Hey everyone, it's Kai, and overdress is coming out very soon. I mean, the start deck's already out. The first booster pack, which is the big one, is coming out this Saturday in Japan. So in preparation for that, Bushiroad has updated the card list on the main site, and they've also updated the deck log. So we can start building decks and theorizing decks and building some cool decks that we can maybe proxy, or if you're in Japan or in the Asia region, you can start playing with immediately. So I'm going to go through every single archetype, the 10 all up. These are kind of my preliminary decks, my first decks that I've tested with either on stream, and then there'll be some more preliminary theory decks that you'll see when we go through all the decks, and I'll point out which ones like in super theory mode, and then you can kind of build from that, right? This is more like, this is definitely not a final build, although the card pool is slightly limited in my opinion, but there is still a lot more that you could probably tweak and change and flex and just go from there. All right, so this is just a primer, this is just a starting point for everyone. Now, also, apparently, 50% of the people who watch this channel aren't subscribed, so if you do like the content, please subscribe, press that subscribe button and smash the I think it's the bell icon to get notified of all the new stuff that we get posted here. So let's get started, and we'll talk about decks, starting off with Dragon Empire. So the first deck we're going to look at is the Nirvana deck, and this is the one that I've played on stream, very similar to what I've played on stream with Mark, and you'll find that a lot of my decks do focus a lot on the defensive side. If I have defensive options, I want to run it, just because there's that weird kind of weird difference where before in V we had a lot of defensive power, but now our grade 1s have low defense, power lines is still quite high, so we kind of want to have all the defensive cards that we get. And in that case, I'm running a lot of these orders that gain defensive power. So there's kind of like, people who don't like this, because remember, you can only still play one order per turn, so you can only play one of these blitz orders per turn. They have multiples of them stuck in your hand. You can't use all of them, right? The way I see it is that, you try to use this in priority, like once every turn you try to use it if you have multiple. Otherwise, you just discard it for other stuff, like for your nulls, if you have excess, or, just sometimes you can brick with them, you just draw a lot of them and you can't use them, and that's bad luck. But overall, I think the net plus, like a net plus, as in, having them in your deck will definitely let you be able to grind out games a bit more than not having it. And like, who knows, right? As the format progresses, we might find that we don't need that many defensive orders, so we can start taking them out or cutting them down, or just getting rid of them altogether, right? The other thing is that the card pool is still kind of small. We are running like this card, which is just pretty much just gets 2,000 when it boosts, so it becomes a 10k booster. Actually pretty okay in this deck, because boosting like a Virina Valiente means you hit like at least 23, but it's got something underneath it, so it's like 28 with like overdress, and then the power scales from there. And 28 is a really nice number to hit because it needs a 2-card guard, right? And when this card hits, you can stand it and bam. The problem with this deck is that you use a lot of counterblast, and Dragon Empire currently does not have any resource generating abilities. Okay, so every counterblast that you use, it kind of stays face down forever unless you trigger a heal. All right. One other thing is also that we're not running Sunrise Egg, the starter. We're running 4 Trick Stars, and we're going to use one of them as the starter. This is kind of a thing that people have been playing around with, and the idea is that if you use this as a starter, of course, if you go second, bad luck, you don't get the draw. But if you go first, you have a Trick Star already in your soul, and then as you progress through your ride line, you can Soul Blast this out with Ryu, Soul Blast the Trick Star, and then immediately when you get to like when you get to your grade 3, you can get that Trick Star back. But you're also your grade 1. Also gets a trickster as well, so you have 2 trick stars, and you can immediately start overdressing, and having like a 2 overdress turn is very strong. We're on 4 arcs because arcs is just good. Draw 1, draw 2, counterblast 1, draw 2 is just nice just to go through your deck. Usually a lot of these cards neg you, like Valiente negs you. This lets you get it back. When you overdress, it's also technically counts as a neg as well, but you're kind of getting it back by the amount of power you totally gain, right? Hopefully gain. The Virina is your biggest hitting card, kind of. It's like hits 30k, just very simply. You don't even need a Soul Blast 2 to get the retire. It just goes, slams in 20k by itself, and then with a boost here, you're 30k. Pretty nice. And then again, yeah, we all know about Valiente. It hits big. You can put it on top of things to get even bigger, and your opponent has to guard it, because otherwise you can kind of stand it up and power through. So one thing you just have to be careful of, as we said before, you need to be careful of your counterblast. If you carelessly use your counterblast, either your things stop getting power, or you won't be able to get this resetting effect, which means the pressure from your cards go down quite a bit, and you just don't have any counter charges. We only run one of this because this does require counterblast and needs to hit, so the value of this is kind of low. But in those rare situations when you hit with it, you can retire it and then search your deck for another Nirvana and Persona Blast and like that. But generally speaking, if you're playing down your arcs and counterblast 1 and drawing 2, you kind of just draw into your Nirvanas anyway, or draw into key pieces. So that's just how it goes. So this is actually a very strong deck. I do think it's one of the high tier decks in the current metagame. So give it a try, give it a whirl. It is very aggressive. If you like being aggressive, this is the deck for you. All right. Okay, so the next deck that we're going to feature is Eugene, and this one is in the theory stage. Probably going to test it on Saturday, but you can see here from the tag above my camera, theory. So yeah, this is still a very, very theoretical deck. Now, the one thing I have against this deck is that it feels kind of like luck sacky. So the whole idea behind Eugene is that his skill is that you can rest 2 cards and then retire something, and then when you retire something, it procs off a bunch of other skills, and then when your opponent has like an empty field or close to an empty field, you can Soul Blast. Soul Blast 5, and then you call from the top deck equal to the amount of empty slots on your opponent's side. So if they have a fully empty field except for their Vanguard, you can call 5, and then you basically get a free field, which is pretty cool, right? But what usually happens is that you call a bunch of cards that you don't want, and you feel bad. Now, the cards that you don't call onto the field, they go back to your soul, so they kind of refund or fund the next Soul Blast 5 that you can continue to use. So that's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. The cards that kind of proc off the effect. Here's the grade 1, where, if something gets retired during the main phase, you use the second effect, which you counterblast 1, and then retire itself to retire something else on your opponent's other field. So that's how you kind of make your opponent get an empty field pretty quickly. Another card is this card, which it retires itself to look at the top card of your deck, and if it's a unit, you can call it, and if you don't call it, then you put it into your soul. So it kind of funds Eugene's next kind of thing. And then since these cards just go away, you can rest them for Eugene's effect, and then you make empty slots that you can call onto, which is kind of cool, right? And then the rest of the deck is just kind of revolving around your opponent having no cards on the field. They get power. So this card is just if your opponent has 2 or less regards, you get 5k. So hitting 15 is quite nice. Especially this is kind of gonna, when you go first, you're gonna attack into their 10k grade 2. And usually they won't commit that many cards early game. So this will just be hitting 15 and hitting a nice 10k guard number, which is kind of hard to guard. And then this card is part of your right chain. It's Randall. And it's just one of the few cards that can soul charge. It does require a counterblast 1 for it, but kind of you don't use that much counterblast in this deck, which is kind of fine. Your opponent has to have 2 or less regards as well, and it gets power, which is okay. And then this one is kind of interesting. This goes to soul. So when your Vanguard attacks, if your opponent has 2 or less regards, you put this in your soul. So it's an easy way to generate soul to fuel Eugene's cost, and then your Vanguard gets a crit. So ideally you attack with this first, and then put this in to put on some crit pressure. And then, although you neg, technically Eugene can call a full field, right? So it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And this card is just kind of a filler slot. It gets defensive power, right? If you intercept with it, you Soul Blast 1 against 5k defensive power. The problem is there's not much stuff that is kind of good to put in. There is another card that's like on hit, discard 1, draw 1, which you can kind of consider putting in. And then you've got your nulls, and you have 4 of these defensive orders again. This one is pretty good, I like to say. It's just damage zone is 3 or higher. It is a 15k shield. So you'll naturally get this effect to be able to guard with 15k. Otherwise, like, it can become dead, of course. If you see it from Eugene, it just automatically goes to soul. But generally speaking, I think you can kind of spam this quite a bit. If not, just discard it with your null, right? Simple. We will test this. We will test this build on Saturday and see how it goes. So we've tested this deck on stream. This is Bruce, Final Rush. Final Rush is one of the better decks in the set, in my opinion. It's just got a solid game plan. It can continuously get your Persona rides and just put on a lot of pressure. You naturally get into your Final Rush, Soul Blast 5 mechanic. So that's nice. And then, although you're not running things like Brother's Soul and all that, you do have this new card that was released, Marjorie, which makes you get soul pretty easily. It's like Number of Terror, you soul in a card on your field. It draws 1 and soul charges 1, which is great, and it gets 10k for the whole turn. So this card naturally just gets you a lot of soul. Acrobat Presenter gets you a lot of soul. We have a new card that got released recently. This guy, Steam Battler Gungan Ram, which gives you a soul, but rare chance you have a lot of cards in soul. You can Soul Blast 3 and draw a card, and sometimes you do hit that number. You actually do. Because, Marjorie just does a lot of work, and Acrobat Presenter does a lot of work. So yeah, getting that Soul Blast 3 is actually not that hard. We run the Proto Bulb Dragon, which is just great. Every turn you can kind of use this effect, because you actually don't use a lot of Counterblast in this entire deck, so you can freely use this. You just have to be careful on how you, if you have 2 Marjories on the field with this, you have to be careful how you use the effect. But generally the idea is that you soul charge a bunch of cards, you see a Bruce, you get the Bruce back into hand to be able to put on a lot of pressure next turn, and rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. A rare case is you get back like a Null or an Over Trigger to be able to guard with, but otherwise, Proto Bulb just does a lot of work. I run one of this card because it's just Counterblast 1, get 5k. You don't use any Counterblast. Not many other cards to put in as well, so you might as well do that. Interesting, I'm only running one of this defensive order, and I like this defensive order. This is one of the easier ones to get, like 5 soul or above, you get 15k shield. So run one, simply because sometimes, at least with Bruce, you might not get into a situation where you have 5 cards in soul. You're waiting for your next turn Marjories and Acrobat Presenters to soul charge a lot. You'll do that. But yeah, that's okay. And then we saw the new Diablos Eden. This is just nice. You know, the crit actually comes into handy, comes into play quite a bit, which is okay. It's just during Final Rush you get 5k, and then if you stand it by an effect, you get a crit. So, you know, your first attacks will just be 5k, but when you restand with the Final Rush, you'll have a crit on top. So make some weird formations, you know. And then when it hits, when an attack hits something, you may Counterblast 1 and a retire Rearguard. This doesn't have to hit a Vanguard. And, you know, you can spend that Counterblast. Don't be afraid of spending that Counterblast. You don't use that Counterblast for anything at all. Like, really, this deck is very, very lean. You know, lean. You're probably spending all your Counterblasts on releasing your things from prison, right? That's the crazy thing about this deck. Your resources are so free. Prison is like a terrible matchup for you. Bruce, I think we haven't talked about Bruce, right? This is the main star of the deck. Soul Blast 5. Yeah, Soul Blast 5, and then, you know, stand 2 of your front row runes. Pretty simple. You enter Final Rush at the beginning of the ride phase, so it's your second grade 3 turn. And yeah, generally you want to kind of always Persona ride whenever you have Final Rush, just so you can, you know, put on a lot of pressure, right? You double dip the continuous 10k, and that's where your pressure really comes from. But overall, it's a very good card. And generally speaking, like, just with Proto Bulb and that combo is you can really get all your cards that you need. We run 4 of this guy, the Ride Chain, because he gets 5k in Final Rush, and there's really not much anything better to play. Unfortunately, just vanilla when you play him out early. And kind of the same thing with this, we just run one of him because his effect is not amazing. I mean, in Final Rush, he gets 5k. Grade 2 gets it as well, and he can intercept, right? So, good stuff. I think you might see that a lot of my decks, I'm currently just running 8 crit, 3 draw, 1 over trigger, and 4 heal. I think that's kind of just the default that I've been using, because I feel like, you know, draws are kind of the least useful card in the entire game at the moment. So, over triggers, you know, kind of is like a pseudo draw. Because well, it's not really a pseudo draw, but you get 100 million power, which is kind of better than 1 card. So, yeah, over trigger replaces the draw, right? So that's it with Bruce. It's a very, very strong deck. Marjorie makes the whole deck. Well, you see, I'm like not running things like Brother's Soul and all that because you don't need it, right? You don't need it. You actually just naturally generate a lot of soul. So overall, it's okay. It's a very strong deck. I think it's one of the strongest decks in the meta at the moment. So from a start deck, that's pretty good. 333 yen, boys. Next, let's jump into Baromagnus, right? Baromagnus, we've tested this deck on stream. This deck used to suck, all right? I remember printing this deck out to proxy in the early stages of the reveals, and it just didn't have any cards that could soul charge for free. It was pretty bad. But now that it did, they revealed the support. This deck is actually insane. Really, very, very strong. I'm not sure if it's tier 1 though. I don't know if it's tier 1, but it's definitely strong. Is definitely strong. Baromagnus, this is your cool guy. When it attacks, you can Counterblast 1. If you have 5 or more soul, you draw 1, and then if you have 10 or more soul, you get taken a crit. And then if you have 50 more soul, you soul in everything on your side of the field, and you soul in everything on your opponent's side of the field. And then you call out 2 regards, and they get plus 10k. So pretty nice. I think the idea of this deck is that you immediately on the first turn want to get to 10 soul, because getting the 10k and a crit puts on a lot of pressure, and then the turn after that, then you go into the 15 soul. Now, if you can get to 15 soul early, maybe that works out pretty well. You can put on a lot of pressure, but to get to 15 soul, you do have to commit a lot of cards, and they all go into soul, so you're kind of negging yourself a lot. I think it's quite strong to just prioritize getting the 10k, but if you do have the ability to go into the 15 soul and you're not on high damage and things like that, just give it a go, right? You can do it. The rest of the deck is just either soul charging or it's just a nice card to call out. So this card, soul charges. It's your ride line. This card, very strong. This is basically the card that you'll be calling out via Baromagnus, because when you have 10 or more soul, it gets 10k power. So this comes out as 18. Baromagnus gives it a 10, so it's 28. It's a very, very good number. And then you suck it in and then call it out, suck it in, call it out. Just how it is. With Persona Ride, it naturally hits 28. When it comes out, it's 38. So it's just great, right? Deep Sonica. Remember that. This is your main call target. Curtis is your free soul charge 2. I think I've used its second effect once when I got rushed to 5. But yeah, it just comes into play, soul charge 2, which is great. This card, Selfish Engraver, it is also kind of a soul charge 2. If it hits anything, you can soul charge 1. But smart people will kind of check your soul and then probably got it. But regardless, at the end of battle, you put into soul. And when you have 10, if you have 10 or more soul, you can put into your soul and countercharge 1, which is great. So you can kind of not get counterblast denied. And since you're gonna soul in everything, you might as well just suck it in and get a 10k, get a countercharge for free, right? We run the Grimna Ram again because he soul charges 1 and. You don't really use the second effect much. Like once you get to the 15 soul and then you start sucking in things again, maybe you do if you're over the limit. But the problem with this deck that I found is that you can deck out. You can actually deck out. Soul charging 15 is not a joke. You actually start with less cards in your deck for overdress. You start with only 46. So you have 3 cards less than before. So soul charging at least 15, you're down to 31, and then you have to draw for turn, you take damage. You can deck out. I think I've decked out twice in this deck through testing. So yeah, again, I'm running like 8-3-1-4. Is that how you say it? I only run 2 crawling insects. The idea of this card, and I know people really like this card, but you know, getting multiples of this in your hand can really brick. And if you have too many of them when you don't have other good cards that you want, then it sucks, right? It sucks. But ideally, you can give something a lot of power. You can give your Vanguard a lot of power. Says crit and force your opponent to null, and if you know that he doesn't have any nulls, then this can pretty much just win you the game. You know, give your Vanguard like plus 30k power, comes in with the crit, bam, null or die, right? Null or die. It's like DI. And then I'm running 3 of this Tartarus Scrum and Tartarus Beat Scrum, 15k shield. Again, it's very easy to get 5 or more soul in this deck. You know, very easy. You literally just sit on 10 to 15 soul, so this is basically always a 50k shield. And sure, you know, if you get multiple in your hand, then bad luck. But you know, you soul charge a lot, you'll be soul charging a bunch of these too, so you probably get 1 or 2 in the game, and that's just good. You know, 15k shield is just good. Baromagnus, very, very strong. Very strong. I do like playing this deck now. It doesn't feel bad, right? Next we have is Bastion. All right, Bastion, crazy good deck, right? Crazy good deck. I've went a bit more defensive with this deck, but you can see how crazy the ratios are, man. Look, 27 grade 3s, 1 grade 2, and 5 grade 1s. And the grade 1s are literally just like 4 nulls and 1 ride line. Pretty fun deck. So the one card they finally shown us is this new order, which is the 15k shield order. This condition is actually pretty simple as well. If you have 3 or more units on your field, pick one of them and it gets 15k shield. So naturally, you do commit cards on the field, you get 15k shield. Bam, easy. We also play the Angel, just because I like defense. This is just, if you're on Bastion, for every 2 grade 3s, it gets 5k shield. This also counts as in the Guardian Circle as well. So, unfortunately, she doesn't do anything when you place it on Regard, but she looks nice. So it's great, but also just committing like a board full of 3s and then putting this down means that she's a big shield. She's big shield. We run the nice witch as well, Sararia, because she just has, you know, when you discard during a turn, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, draw a card. So that's really good. If you discard for like the ride lines or ride chains, it works. So that's great. When your Bastion stuff procs, just discard this, great, draw a card. Yeah, it just does it itself. One thing though is that yes, you do use quite a lot of soul in this because you want to run Dark Strain, you want to Soul Blast 2, you want to use this effect for Orden, because it draws 2, and that does require 1 soul as well. So that's why I think we're still stuck running Reflux, because Reflux is just put into soul, give a grade 3 regard 10k. But just being able to put something to soul is just really nice. And then since you can hopefully restand that grade 3, if you like put this onto this facade, you do a lot of work. This is on hit, counter charge 1, soul charge 1. So that is basically all the resources you need for the deck. So you want to stack power on this, hit it in, bam, hopefully it hits, then Bastion attacks, bam, stand this again, lots of power, good times. Now, we only run 2 of this because although the effect is good, you don't really, it's not really totally required to have it, you know. If you get it, it's good. If you don't, then well, just play good old Bastion and bash face, right? It's more important to like just get Ordens because you want to go through your deck and try and get more Bastions to make your turns way more threatening. And then, yeah, that's kind of it. Now, there is things you can do, like you can run more Rooks, okay? Is it Rooks? Yeah, you can run more Rooks because you can a 15k boost, which is nice, but I've had so many times when I trigger like a trigger and then a Rooks, I run 4 Rooks only and I trigger it and it just feels bad, you know, like super bad. So I've just kind of cut it, you know, so who cares about boosting? I put in this card, you know, it's a grade 3. It will never get you wrong, right? It'll never let you down unless when you trigger it, you know, when you check the top card via Fort's effect, and then it's an order. That's why we only run 2 orders. That's why we only run 2. Otherwise, yeah. But overall, he's cool. You know, it's a grade 3. You run every grade 3s. It's full on YOLO. If you trigger a null, then too bad. But nulls are kind of important, so just keep your hand. But overall, I think this is a pretty strong deck. One of the stronger decks out there, and you don't really need to think much actually when playing this. Just do your thing, and hope for the best, right? Just kind of plays itself. So. Very strong deck as well. It's pretty crazy. A lot of these new start decks, 333 yen decks, are very, very strong. I think they're the strongest so far, right? The top 3 have all been start decks. So money well spent. Okay, so this one is Hexaorb. Now this is one of the theory decks. I haven't really played around with it just because, you know, other decks are better, and we're waiting for more cards revealed for it. But overall, like, Hexaorb is kind of weird, you know. Hexaorb is kind of weird. You kind of want to run a lot of 3s in the deck, just because 3s and Keter are kind of good. Because if you randomly trigger overtrigger, you know, you basically just win really, really hard. But also, grade 3s hit numbers pretty well, right? They hit numbers good. So let's just start off with Hexaorb. Hexaorb herself is just when you drive check triggers a trigger, you can give one of your rear guards 10k power. So that's nice. And then her second effect is if you Persona Road this turn, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, and then put a crit or front from your hand on top of your deck, and then you get +1 drive. So you will definitely confirm to get another 10k power. We'll definitely trigger the first effect, right? Now, I don't run fronts in the deck. This is just warning here. I don't run fronts in the deck. The reason is that I run 8 crits and screw fronts, right? Screw fronts. I kind of want to run more draws, right? One thing also is that this deck doesn't really draw that much, okay? It has this card, Painkiller Angel. So when it boosts, at the end of the battle that it boosts, Soul Blast 1, and then retire it and draw a card. So this isn't a plus. This is just like a filter. You commit it, and then, you know, it refunds itself, right? So you kind of go through a deck, but you don't really plus hard from it, and that's it. So another thing about this deck is that it requires a lot of soul. Hexaorb requires soul. This sister, Divine Sister, Tartane requires soul. This one is just, you know, come into play, Soul Blast 1, rest it, get the top 2 cards, pick one, put it on the top, then put the other one on the bottoms. But it needs soul to do that. So yeah, I'm only running 3 of it because it's to rest itself. Yeah, we were told Painkiller Angel needs a soul. Yeah, so you need soul, and you don't really generate soul that well unless you Persona Ride. So at least Reflux can give something 10k, right? Again, I told about this before. If you need soul, this card's a great soul card. Just put it in, give it grade 3 10k. You run a lot of facades because he does counterblast and he does counter charge, so very nice. So you ideally just want to put these to front and then kind of bash their face. You run one of these new Divine Sister. This is the Piste. Anyway, she kind of can stand. right? So if your drive check reveals a trigger unit, you can counterblast 2 and then stand it and give 5k. So this is kind of weird. You kind of want to attack with it first, but since you can kind of, you can stack triggers, you know when you're attacking with it first and doing work, right? And then you can, again, pop a lot of power on this and then just, whack twice with it and get double the value. Overall, this deck is just kind of, I think Bastion's better, right? There's ways to manipulate your top checks. So there's a high chance of you triggering your over trigger, and you can manipulate it in a way so you don't draw your over trigger and all that, so things like that. So that's kind of nice. You kind of know when you're triggering a trigger, and generally you can generate a lot of power. I still run 2 of these 15k shield defensive. Oh, one thing, I'm running 2 of the draw order. Now why? It's because you draw 2 cards and you give something 5k. Just because you don't have good draw engines in this deck, you don't really have good draw engines. So yeah, counterblast 2, draw 2 is fine. And since this doesn't use soul, it's okay, right? Because counterblast is there's not much you're gonna use counterblast on. That's for real. Like you're gonna counterblast 2 once a game with this, maybe. You're gonna counterblast 1 here, not really. Her effect is just when you drive check a trigger, you can counterblast 1 and bottom deck one of your opponent's front row cards, which is it's whatever. It's whatever. But yeah, Hexaorb uses a counterblast, and that's pretty much it, right? So you're probably gonna trigger a heal sometimes. Your facade is gonna hit again, and then you're gonna have enough to just use like 1 draw 2, which is pretty good enough. It's good enough. So overall, I'm gonna test this one as well on Saturday. So if you want to check out Twitch, we'll check my Twitch, and we'll be testing this one and just see how good it is. Okay, so moving on, we got Zolga. All right, Zolga. I did test Zolga on the weekend. I went fully ham and played like 16 orders or something like that. It was pretty crazy. After that, I kind of knew which orders I want to change out, how I want to change the order lineup, and just put in actually just a bunch of cards. Just put in more cards. I had a crazy silly idea where you'd use the blitz order for this. I think it's this one, right? You use the blitz order and you just kind of call a null or an overtrigger every turn and then bounces the hand during your opponent's turn, so you have like infinite guard. But no, that didn't really work out because reality sucks. But that's how you learn, right? That's how you learn. So this deck, we're running a lot more creatures now. With 11 orders, we went down by 5. We're only 11 orders. I run 4 Zolga, 4 of this dude gets plus 5k when you play an order. This is part of your ride line. We run 1 of the Rancor chain because he's kind of just low value. You just use it for the ride line. And you got the Nurgle starter because he just looks fat and annoying, right? Look at that guy. 2 of this hydraulic ram dragon, because if you play an order, it gets 5k, and then it's 13, gets 5k, 18. That's a good number to hit. So yeah, just can swing by itself, and then if you put 10ks on it, 28, even a better number like that. This is it Hendrina? Yeah, Hendrina. This is a very important card. Both effects are very useful when it comes to play. You may mill 3, so you don't have to mill 3, and that's pretty good because you don't want to deck out, right? The second effect is you just retire it, and then for that turn when you use Alchemagic, doesn't require soul. Just negate the soul cost on them. So that's pretty good. And then I run 2 of this. This is just a counterblast on soul last one. Drop zone, get a grade 2 or less card from your drop zone, call it, and get 5k. So it's an easy way to just generate a field. And but you have to play it from hand. That's just the only limitation. The Mantis is really good. It's just when it comes into play on the Regard Circle, you give another card 5k, so it just hits nice numbers. And you get your null, you get your over trigger. Now, the orders are the big thing. Now, a lot of people hate this order. This is the Soul Blast 2, look at top 4, call 1, but if you Alchemagic it, you can call 2 instead, and they get 5k. They hate this because you need 2 soul, and 2 soul is hard, and sometimes you miss, right? If you miss, you just feel really awful. But the thing is, this is the only card that can kind of plus, just build a field and feel really like Zolga can plus, sure, it's like counterblast 1 plus 1. This one can plus 2, right? It's plus 2, so that's pretty good. The other Soul Blast 1 call a unit only calls 1. This one calls 2, so that's kind of nice. When I think about how I want to use this card, I want to use this like twice a game. It mills 4. It also gives power, which is a big thing. And then, you can kind of hard cast this one time, and then the next time you want to use Hendrina's skill to negate the cost. And I think that's kind of perfect. But I feel like I want to use this twice a game. So that's why I've upped the count to 2. Before I was only playing 1. The next one is the Grief Despair Order. I ran 3 before, but found that it was kind of hard to like alchemagic it with other stuff because I kind of wanted to alchemagic other stuff more at certain periods of time. So I dropped this down to 2, but I think, you know, using this like 2 or 3 times, I can see myself doing that. So I think that's fine. The other one is the this one, which is, I forgot the name for it, but it basically, you retire 2 cards and then you draw 1, and then you put this card to soul and then you countercharge 1. So I had this at 4. Because I think you just, every time you alchemagic, you just alchemagic something else with this, and you feel really good. But turns out you hardly use the skill. Like retiring 2 is really annoying. You don't really need countercharge, surprise, surprise. And soul, you can manage it pretty well. So overall, this card's kind of like low value. When I popped it down to 2, and then we'll see what else how this works out. This one's the Monster Reborn one. You know, Soul Blast 1, call a card from your drop zone that's less than or equal to your grade, and then give it 5k. So this is kind of probably the card that you're gonna want to combine with a lot of times, because you're calling a card for free and then you use Zolga skill to get another card as well. So that's how you build the field. And again, you still have that silly combo that calling a shield and then bouncing it with your blitz order is cool, right? So this is the big changes. That's how I kind of want to mold my game plan with Zolga. I did test version 1 last time, but I'll test version 2 next time, so we'll probably see this one coming up again. I can kind of see where I might want to change it. I might want to up the order counts again for certain things, but otherwise I think I probably won't go more than 11. Probably might even go less. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. All right, so the next one we have is Magnolia. This one is in theory. I actually wasn't that interested in Magnolia. So I don't know why. You know, it felt like boring, I guess, is the thing. It's like it does multi-attacks, but I'm like a lame player. I'm a lame defensive player, so I hate multi-attacks. I just want to hit big. I want to hit with crits, but you know, Magnolia is not like that. So we have to. This is kind of in theory. Well, we will test it. Of course. This is something that we will test. But I think I don't know how many people like Magnolia, right? I don't know how many people like Magnolia. It's one of the. I think it's probably one of the least liked, but it has a lot of cute cards. You know, a lot of cute cards. So Magnolia, with the start deck, you basically remove all the janky Soul Blast stuff that you don't need, and then just keep in the stuff that's good, right? So I'm still running 4 of this Ratis because it gets power, right? It's a ride line. The back row, you Soul Blast 1 and get 10k. It's all right. Since we've taken out a lot of the Soul Blast stuff, we can kind of play this and not feel bad, you know. The other Soul Blast card that we kind of still have is this Urania. I mean, we saw it Zolga, but you know, this one it just gets a free field. You know, it gets a free card. It's nice. Counterblast. It is kind of heavy. I think in this deck you have to be more wary about your counterblast because you still don't have a countercharge. You can run. I think there's a PR that countercharges, but it's the condition for it. It's really lame, so I just didn't bother with it. So with this deck, you kind of have to be careful about the plays you make. You can play kind of lame with Magnolia, but then you can make one big turn to kind of finish off your opponent. I think that's the idea. So just be careful of this card. This does require 2 resources, and you kind of want to save your resources for that big turn, especially your counterblast. Because we did get the double R, and that is Gunosura? And the effect is just when it's on the back, when it attacks, you can counterblast 1, and then choose another one of your regards, and for that turn, you give that regard this unit's power. So ideally, you have like this in the back with another one of this in the back, so you can kind of chain the powers on. And then since like you Persona Road with your Magnolia, your front row is also hitting big, but then you like stack all the triggers onto your back row, onto this like one guy, and then you pass that power on. So like pass the parcel, right? Pass the parcel of power. So that's why you want to save your counterblast, just to make the big turn. And then afterwards, I think you're just playing super lame, but that's about it. You know, that's about it. And then the other cards are just things that get power. So this one, you know, if you have 4 more other regards, it gets 5k, so it's 15. Yeah, it's whatever. There's really nothing that much better to play. That's the problem. And then with the Mantis is back, I think this is one of the better cards released for Stoichea. Yeah, come to play, give 5k, give it to the, I don't know, is it like a bear stag or something like that? So you give it to the bear stag, and then, you know, chain that power on, pass that power, but, you know, otherwise you just play it normally just to put on pressure, you know, just play it down early, give something else power and just put on pressure, and then you can bounce it back with the Blitz Order. How cool is that? Play it again next turn. Again, it's an 8 crit 3 draw build, but overall, yeah, like we kept Bobbleaxe again because he's like free 5k, right? So he hits 13 for free by itself. So that's why he's still in. He's still what a cute card, right? What a cute card. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it for Magnolia. We'll test this one on Saturday. We'll test this one on Saturday and see how it goes. Now moving on to Brandt. This one is much more exciting. Unfortunately, Prison is not as exciting in my opinion because you know, it's very easy to play around. Prison is actually very easy to play around, and against good players, they will play around and totally screw over your blame. It sucks so bad, man. It sucks when they play around the game plan. But you know, it happens. That's how you play Vanguard. We're running 2 prisons. People ask why you run 2 prisons. You only need 1. Simply because, you know, if you get 1 in your hand, I really want a plus with my ride line skill, you know, so I want to get my second one. I will only play 1 though, unless I really need the soul, but I don't think I need the soul because we have the new Godzilla card now. This guy goes into soul to countercharge 1. Right? Is that Mecha Godzilla? Okay, it's a Mecha Godzilla. But yeah, so we want a plus, but we only want to play 1. Don't forget this card soul charges 3, so it makes all your soul issues not an issue, but we still want a plus, and then you can just discard this for your ride line and all that. So yeah, it's very simple. Otherwise, Sarah Snow, we kind of know what it does now. You know, getting the triple drive basically wins games, but your opponent will play around that. Right? They will play around it. They'll commit like 2 cards in the field, and you're gonna feel bad. And then, but otherwise, you know, her second skill will just imprison cards. Counterblast 1 for 2 is pretty good value, and that is, you're basically searching for other ways to get a third, and this is one of the ways to get a third. This guy just comes into play, Soul Blast 1, gets you another one. Your new Rouge, right? This new card that got revealed, coming into play, Soul Blast 1, prison a card. And then this guy, like, is he? It looks like he's like roller skating on a car, but I guess he's flying, right? This one, if it stays on the field, it's an act once per turn. You can counterblast on Soul Blast 1 and imprison one of your opponent's cards. But then, if you have 3 or more cards in prison, it draws a card. That second effect is like really annoying, right? Because it means you kind of have to counterblast 2 to be able to use the effect, because you use Sarah Snow and then this one. And that's pretty big drain on counterblast, you know? It's a pretty big drain on counterblast. I actually don't like him that much. I like this guy better, because I like this, the Keter Blue, because it's easy. You just kind of come into play, you have at least 1 card in the prison, just counterblast 1, soul blast 1, draw a card. I know it's very, very easy. You don't have any silly conditions and all that. So I run like 3-2 because this card can come in handy. And then we have the grade 1 here, which is just after it boosts. If you have an auto zone in the set, you have a set order in the auto zone, put it to soul and countercharge 1. So you can kind of abuse, like, you just kind of make sure you have enough counterblast to be able to use your, like, you know, draw 1s, your prisons, and your prison draw 1s. All right. We do have, the good thing about Brandt is they don't have that 15k order. It has this one which is if 1 or more cards in your prison, it gets like plus 2k power and plus 5,000 shield. So if you have at least 1 card in the prison, it becomes a 10k shield. And 10k shields are very good. 10k shields are nice because, you know, it's just really awkward to guard 10ks. But your opponent's gonna know that too, and he's just gonna kind of free the boys, and this becomes a dirty 5k shield, which is, it's sad, but it's still good. It's still good. I'm just playing every single defensive option we can, because the other cards, like, you get to a point where just running more cards in prison stuff just becomes pointless, because they just don't have a field anymore, or there's cards on their field that you don't want to imprison because they have come into play effects and things like that. So we run 1 defensive order, and this is the Among Us order. You know, Counterblast 2 is pretty heavy, but I think, like, just running like 1 off as like a random surprise and 30k shield is like, yo, 30k shield, yo, will kind of randomly win games. I mean, just feel free to take it out, but I really want to try it because, you know, 30k shield is good. It's good, and you're only running 1 of it, so, you know, it can never brick unless you don't have 2 counterblasts, right? So with this deck, I think this is one of the few decks you can, like, change up the trigger ratios, because of Sarah Snow triple drive, you can kind of change things. So yeah, overall, unfortunately, I think, you know, against smart players, they will play around this and you'll feel bad, but against weaker players, I guess is the better term, they're just gonna walk into your prison and you're gonna feel like a god, right? You're gonna triple drive every turn and destroy them, right? Okay, so lastly, we have everyone's favorite deck, and that is Orfist, because it looks awesome. And you know, I really want to test. This is a theory deck as well, just a heads up. But I will test this. I will definitely test this. This looks so sick. It looks so sick. So we run the Orfist ride chain, right? It's we're on max this guy. We're on 3 of the grade 2. Because there's not really other good grade 2s I want to run, but at least he can kind of get 5k. So it hits like 15 plus 8, so it hits 23. We're in one of the grade 1 because unfortunately, again, the grade 1 value is kind of not there in my opinion. But they did reveal like this interesting new grade 3, which basically, if you're in the Abyssal Dark Knight, so the second stage of your world, when you attack, you pick a column instead, and it attacks the whole column. I mean, the card does have to be on the front row, so it's if they don't have a booster, then tough luck, right? But you know, it's just free retire, free real estate, right? So yeah, it's just good. It's just good. All right. We run 4 of this grade 2 Doramura. So this one is just coming to play on the Regard Circle. If you're in Abyssal Dark Knight as well, you can blast 1, so blast 1, draw a card. So overall, just it draws. What more do you want? This is like the Orfist version of the the blue card, Kirina Blue, right? The grade 1. We run again the Mecha Kaiju just because you know it souls in, countercharge 1, very important. And we run this. Is this like an evil version or like a red version of the prison defensive one? This one requires you to counterblast though. But you know, if your world is Dark Knight, it gets plus 5k shield. And then if you're in Abyssal Dark Knight, it gets 10k shield, so 50k shield. Yeah, man. So again, you don't need to run like an order, 15k order shield. So that's nice. For the orders, the world orders, we run 4 of this because this one is good. This one like coming to play Soul Blast 1, draw a card, right? So it replaces itself. Very, very nice. The other card we only run 2 of because this one's Soul Blast 1, come to play Soul Blast 1, like retire one of your opponent's front row. It's technically a plus, but it's a minus for your opponent. I do value pluses more than retiring. So yeah, this one's better. This one's better. Just run 4 of this. You can search for one immediately, and then just hopefully you naturally draw into the other one. We don't run that many boosters in deck. If you look at it, like this is the main booster you run, but this retires itself, so it's not permanent. And then this one you kind of want to keep in your hand because it's defensive. But you know, thanks to Orfist skill, Counterblast 2, you get 3 like boosters that sit around forever, and then you can move them up and attack with 15k power. So yeah, that's why we don't really care about boosters. You know, ideally, this will generate boosters. We'll keep on getting value from every single turn. And then we'll put down some good cards, like we'll put down this card to attack with, we'll put down this card to attack with, and it's all good. So overall, this is probably one of the more simple decks out there. Just bash and bash, right? So yeah, this is all right. I can't wait to test it. I'll test it on Saturday, right? Make sure to tune in on Twitch. And I think it'll be a big testing session. It'll be a big testing session this Saturday, just because you know, it's new and fresh, and we want to test a lot of decks. All right, so those are 10 decks. It's been a while. You know, you've sat down a while and listened, and appreciate that. And look, if you guys like what you see, like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of the decks in the comments below. I know some people definitely have tested certain decks more than me, I think, especially the theory decks as well. And then I'll definitely do some more physical testing on Saturday for some of them. And yeah, let me know what you guys think, guys. Remember that these decks are preliminary decks. They're just kind of first drafts. Some of them are just like even drafts. So they will definitely change as things evolve, and we'll definitely see more lists as you know next week happens. But for now, you know, there's definitely some ideas here that hopefully you can use. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, right? Bye.